Hey, District 2 sports fans, it's Gregory here, and I want to tell you about our new sponsorship here. If you're looking to make your business stand out, you've got to check out Chaos Cartel Company. They specialize in custom shirts, hats, tumblers, banners, and so much more. And the best part, there's no minimum order, and their pricing is amazing. I should know because we have a few shirts from them. Whether you're a small business or just looking to get some cool merch, Chaos Cartel Company is here to help. They love working with other businesses to bring your brand to life. If you want to get started, give them a call at 434 489 6123 or shoot them an email at chaoscartel1, and that's the number one, at gmail.com. Chaos Cartel Company, making your business look good, one custom piece at a time.
You are now listening to the District 2 Sports Podcast, available on all your favorite music apps. Like and subscribe.
All right, this is the District 2 Sports Podcast. We're back with another exciting interview here. We have the head basketball coach of the Mary Baldwin Fighting Squirrels in his first year as the head coach there, Daniel Eacho. Coach, how are you doing today?
Great, Greg. Thank you guys again for having me on.
Yeah, no problem. Like we were talking about before we got started, my first question is always about, kind of your background, let our fans kind of know who you are. You're from the Richmond area, played there at Monacan, and kind of went to Roanoke College for 4 years. But kind of tell us about your background and how you got started.
Yeah, so like you said, I grew up right outside the Richmond area. I actually for my first 2 years of high school, I attended Benedictine, and when I was there, there was a couple pros at that program. Ed Davis was a senior my freshman year. Bradford Burgess, who was on the Final Four team for VCU, was a senior. It was a really, really, really good program, and you know, I I I wasn't one of those kids growing up that basketball came easy. I mean, I had size, that's what I was blessed with, but it just wasn't something I was really that talented with. Got cut all 3 years at middle school, had to work my way up freshman JV. And, I mean, like I said, I guess I made a decision to go attend Monacan High School, and a really good program there. Coach Roberson was the coach at the time, and he and I are still connected to this day. And I was fortunate to have a great experience there. As I mentioned earlier, we won 39 games in 2 years, 39-9. Ran into some really good teams both years. I mean, my junior year, we lost to a John Marshall team. Travis McKay, who went to Wake Forest, was their star player. I was in the Richmond area when Frank Mason was at Petersburg, some of those guys. So, we had some really talented teams. We ended up winning districts one year, but we couldn't get over the hump, unfortunately, when it came to regions and states, because there's just a lot of talent in that Richmond area at that time. And then, yeah, as you mentioned, I was fortunate to be recruited by several really good D3 programs in the ODAC, Christopher Newport, and I made a decision that I felt was best for me in terms of just the overall trajectory. And I tell kids this all the time. You don't want the decision to be strictly basketball. As much as basketball is going to be a big piece of it, you wanted to make sure that from a holistic viewpoint, you make what's best decision for yourself. And throughout the recruiting process, it became evident that Roanoke was that place for me. And yeah, that's kind of how it worked out.
Coach, I'm gonna interrupt you just a second.
Sure.
You mentioned Benedictine and Ed Davis. Of course, that always comes up on my radar. I'm a Carolina guy.
Oh
Ever
yeah.
have any ever have any relationships with Ed and his father Terry?
So I was that freshman, wasn't on varsity, right? So my interactions with Ed was limited.
I got you.
We would play, like, I would, whenever the all freshman JV varsity would have open runs and stuff, I'd play pickup like a couple times, having to guard him. That was interesting, let's just say the least, especially as a 6'3", not very athletic freshman. But yeah, it was pretty limited. But it's actually funny, you brought up Terry. So the assistant coach at Monacan at the time when I was there. His name is Ralph Brown. And Ralph was the starting center at 6'5" for the last national championship Virginia Union team
Right.
back in 2005. And he was a big influence in my life in terms of just helping develop me as a player. Again, undersized, big, that was really successful at the college level. But anyways, because of his connection with Union and everything, Terry came and spoke with our team one time at Monacan. It was really cool to hear him speak. And then obviously the other Union connection that everyone knows, Ben Wallace. I actually have had opportunities to play against him in his summer league back in the day. Right when he was near retiring from the NBA, he would come back, Big Ben's gym down there in Richmond.
Gotcha. Yeah.
We'd be playing, near the end of my college career, or right after my college career, I'd be playing in some summer league games, and he'd come out there, and I mean, even at 40, 42 years old, he was a beast. He was a beast. Trying to move him was like it was an impossible task.
Well,
So
I'm dating myself specifically because I never got a chance to meet Ed at all, but watched him play, his freshman year at Carolina. But Terry went to Halifax County. I didn't know if you knew that or not, but
yeah,
Terry went to Halifax County, was a center there for them at the Comets, and then I went to GW and played baseball. So
okay,
summer of '85, I actually got a chance to play in the Virginia High School League All-Star game, and he was a member of the basketball team. So through a couple of my friends at Halifax that were also playing baseball, I got a chance to meet Terry. And, I don't know if he let his guard down at all when he was doing his speech with you guys, but one of the not only classiest guys I've ever met, but he is one of the funniest guys you will ever meet in your life. So if you ever get a chance to sit down with him, grab you a cup of coffee or 10 cups and sit down with him. He's a funny guy, really
that's
funny.
awesome. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah.
Well, Coach, I wanted to mention, you've coached D2, D3, but you played on D2, D3 level. Kind of talk about the level of competition there, because we do a lot of stuff with recruiting and trying to tell kids, hey, you might not go D1, but D3 is always an option and it's good basketball. So if you can talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think I tell kids all the time, yeah, especially our players here, you gotta be grateful for any opportunity to play college basketball. The percentages of high school athletes that get an opportunity to play, D1, D2, D3, JUCO, NAIA, it's small. It's very small. And, you know, yeah, everyone wants to dream, everyone has goals, and I'm not here to kind of, tell you not to be ambitious, right? But also appreciate the opportunities and know that any level you go to, there's hoopers everywhere. I mean, yeah, I was fortunate to play in one of the best D3 conferences in the country in the ODAC. And I felt in recent years that it's gotten snubbed a couple times in the NCAA tournament with it. It shouldn't be a one bid league. There's no way. I don't even care if it's quote unquote a down year. The ODAC should never be a one bid league. So to see last year 4 teams get in for the first time since my sophomore year of college was fantastic. And guess what? 2 of the 4 made to the Final Four. And if they were on the other side, they may have been playing each other in the national championship game. We can make
Coach,
that
you
argument,
you
right?
kind of echo a lot of the stuff we talk about in our podcast because like we talked about how D3 when they put this tournament together, it's kind of regionalized, and so you see where that South region is usually just packed with teams. Like you have like I said, 4 ODAC teams. You have Christopher Newport, Emory. It's just kind of really loaded compared to other kind of divisions or whatever. So yeah, you kind of echo that sentiment too. But
Yeah,
yeah,
Yeah, we just had this discussion last night, and nothing to take away from the USA South whatsoever. But we discussed the standings of the ODAC last night. You got Hampton Sydney and Randolph Macon at 1 and 2 at 10 and 1, 17 and 3 overall, and then you've got Guilford, Roanoke, and I'm missing somebody. Gregory, who am I
Virginia
missing? Who's
Wesleyan's in that mix
Virginia
right
Wesleyan,
now.
all at 9 and 2. And then
Mhm.
we sit there and say, how can you take 4 out of the 5, 3 out of the 5? I just don't see it. And
I
like
don't
I
see
said,
it either.
Gregor's staying on top of the regionalized things. If you put all 5 of those teams in one region, there's that would be a travesty to NCAA basketball in my book.
I agree. I agree. I agree 100%. Yeah, and I mean, you touched on it. The USA South, obviously, different kind of league, But I'll tell you what's really been eye-opening for me. I'm familiar with the USA South, would have played like actually I scored my 1,000 point against Methodist in my career. So right. So like, I know the USA South. I remember Claude's first year at William Peace, Claude Shields, the head coach, right? Because they came and played us my sophomore year at Roanoke, right? So like I'm very familiar with the league, right, in terms of that regards, but obviously I'd never really coached in it or gone a full season through it. So like this year's been really eye-opening to me in terms of any night you just throw records out the window. It does not matter. I mean, it is competitive top to bottom in this league, and it's impressive. And there's good coaching all across the league too. Different styles, which is unique, right? Whereas like you got some teams that want to play really fast, spread the floor, jack up a bunch of shots, but then you got some teams that are going to sit pack line and use all 30 seconds of the shot clock. So it's definitely been challenging. And I think what our season has reflected is it can be very up and down very quick. We started off with a bang, winning the first 5 games, but then we've been humbled. But here's the thing: is like I wouldn't count us out either. Depending
Right.
on our mindset and our approach moving forward. I really believe there's 4 or 5 teams that can compete and win this league this year. No disrespect to Southern Virginia. Obviously, they've been the most consistent, and that's why they're at top, right? But I think it's still wide open.
Gregory, he's being way too humble already, and he's been led on about his basketball career and how much he played, and he's telling us how he wasn't that good. But look, he makes up for it with brain power, that's for sure. So look, political science major, if I'm not mistaken, and then he has an MBA in business administration. So also a member of the all conference academic team 4 times. And then the ODAC Farm Bureau Scholar Athlete of the Year. I believe that was your senior year, 15, I
So,
believe.
mhm.
So he's not telling us everything, Gregory.
Well, I want to know, your playing career there at Roanoke, where does this 37 point game against Lynchburg rank up there as far as like your games or just time there?
I mean, it definitely was individually a really good game. I'll tell you what, it was so it was a double overtime game,
Wow.
and we lost by 2.
Oh,
And the funny thing, I don't know if you've had Coach Scott on yet, but when it going back to my recruiting process, it was between Roanoke and Lynchburg for me. And Coach Scott was phenomenal. He's still a phenomenal human being. Every time I see him, we talk, touch base with one another. But I think for him, it was tough to really get too upset with my decision with him being a Roanoke alum as well. I hadn't played there and being All American there and everything like that. So, but Coach Scott definitely got the last laugh because they're one of the teams we did not get during my career at Roanoke, and I thought that was going to be the game we got. I mean, we went into it great mindset, great approach. As a team, we just unfortunately couldn't get enough stops. They just got one more bucket than us in that game. So yeah, I mean, it was a great game in terms of, having my career high and everything, but definitely, obviously, you want that to be in a win, more importantly, and unfortunately, it did not come out that way. So,
Coach Scott let us know emphatically that in the mythical ODAC Coaches 101 championships, he wins that tournament if they play to 2. Okay. Overall, overall, though, emphatically and without a shadow of a doubt, we had exactly one coach said he has no competition basically in the ODAC Mythical Championship, and that was Caleb. So he says he wins it hands down.
I was confident, and hey, I'm all there for that. I mean, that's must see TV right there. That is must see TV.
We're
I mean,
trying to schedule it up.
I would
We're
love
looking
it.
for a good sponsor.
I tell you what, we we went and worked Del Curry's camps when I was at Roanoke. Because my coach at the time, Paige Moore, played with Dell in college when his dad Charlie was the head coach of Virginia Tech. And so every year Dell would have Paige bring down a handful of guys to work the camp. He house us for the week and all that. And we played pickup after. And one time, I don't know why, but I guess we were short on numbers or whatever. And Coach Scott would come down too and work the camp. He went out and played. And I mean, this is, probably about 11, 12 years ago, and I don't want to age Coach Scott, but like he was probably in his 40s at the time. I mean, he was out there. He was doing his thing, man. Doing his thing. He was playing. So I have no doubt Coach Scott would give him a run, but also I know I've played pickup with Caleb enough to know he's locked in, man. He's gonna be tough out too.
Well, Coach, you have a stellar career there at Roanoke. So how do you go from, after graduation, how do you get involved in coaching or know you want to coach? And then if you could talk about your stops there at, Hampton Sydney, I think you were at Salisbury and
Yep.
Millersville as well.
Yeah, so you guys mentioned political science. I was double major in history. So, I was basically the textbook version of going to law school, essentially, right? Like poli sci history and then going right on to law school, right? And I was basically 75% of the way there. Took the LSATs, applied to law school, got into W&L law school. But my senior year, I had an opportunity, which I'm very thankful for, to intern at a really good law firm in the Roanoke area, Woods Rogers. And it was a great experience. That's why I tell our guys all the time is like, go out, like conversations and experience. That's what's going to really prepare you. You might have an idea what you want to do, but until you actually go out there and get your feet wet, you don't really know. You don't really know. So that was kind of my eye opening to like, okay, I'm not sure if this is really the path I want to take, especially knowing the time and more importantly, the financial commitment that law school would bring. So, I also had a concentration in accounting while I was at Roanoke. And I remember I went to a jobs fair my senior year and the organization auditor of public accounts was there. It's part of the legislative branch in Virginia, and their job is to audit the executive branch agencies and public higher education institutions in the state of Virginia, right? And it's funny because my dad worked 30 plus years at the Department of Corrections in the financial part. He was CFO eventually. Like he worked his way up. He was CFO. And I remember when I first went to him and said, "Hey, I'm interested in a job here." He's just like, you're not really gonna enjoy that long. And he always hated when they came into his office because obviously their job is to find his mistakes, right? So, it was funny conversation with him based on his background too. But it's a good job. It was a state job right out of school, good pay, not crazy hours versus if I was an auditor for a private company, I'd be working 60, 70-hour weeks, whereas now I get to work 40-hour weeks, right? So I was fortunate to get an opportunity there, but obviously I still had the basketball itch. It's hard to go from it being such a big part of your life to nothing, right? So the way I stayed involved, I was fortunate. Richmond Elite, an ABA organization, had some tryouts and through conversations playing in the Big Ben Wallace Summer League and everything, I was able to find a way onto the roster there. But then also from high school, Bradley Reister. Well, again, you're older than me. So his first year out of school, he went back to Monacan as a volunteer assistant. And it was a different coach at the time, but he really enjoyed the experience. And he actually kind of parlayed that into a college job the next year. And I remember talking to him, I was like, what'd you think? Did you like it? He's like, Coach Spellsberg's great. He's like, he's phenomenal, right? I think the team's going to be really good. I was like, okay. So I reached out to RJ, and who's still the head coach there at Monica now. And I was like, hey, this is my background. I'm a former Monacan player. Like, I'd be really interested in helping you out if you need help. And obviously, like for him, it's a no-brainer. He gets volunteer coach who's been through it, right? Can talk to the kids, relate to the kids, right? So he brings me on staff with him. Well, ultimately, it ends up just being too much, right? I'm trying to play, I'm trying to coach, and I'm working a job, and I'm taking MBA classes at VCU at the time, right? So one of them kind of drops off. And by the way, I my wife my wife now, who was my girlfriend at the time, was still at Roanoke. So I tried to, find to make time to see her, right? Yeah. So so basically, what ended up dropping off was the playing because there were guys that were playing in that they still wanted to do that, and I'm like, okay, I'm already like I'm moved on. I know like I'm not making money playing basketball. Like that's just not what I want to do. So that ends up dropping off, but the coaching kind of picks up. And like I said, we had a really good team that year, a really fun team. We didn't start off great though. I remember like we were 4-4. But we started figuring some stuff out and going on a stretch, and the way that Virginia or VHSL kind of changed up the state breakdown, it I don't want to say made it easier to make a run at it, but it definitely spread out the competition versus when I played, right? Um, Again, it's not to take anything away from that group's achievements, right? I mean, it was a fun run, great achievement, right? But anyway, so we worked our way through, and yeah, we ended up winning 4A state title that year. And as I continued to see the impact I could have, both in terms of basketball development and just relationships with these young men, I was like, this is kind of cool, right? And again, it goes back to my conversation about the law thing. Like I had conversations with coaches I had relationships with, right? People in the business, and I'm like, okay, like, what do you think? Like, and all I heard is like, it's so competitive. It's so competitive. You're gonna have to really just grind and I just made a decision. I was like, okay, if I'm going to do this as a 23-year-old, like I had an opportunity also to actually get a small private school head coaching job, which looking back now, I probably wasn't ready for. All right, but I interviewed and they offered me the job. But I was like, if I'm gonna try this, I'm doing it now before obligations, responsibilities, family, and all that enhances, right? Because it ended up that wanted to be my end goal, obviously. So that's what I did. I reached out, I sent out a ton of emails, ton of correspondence, right? And a couple opportunities presented itself, but the best opportunity was at Hampton-Sydney with Coach Vic, D Vic at the time. He had a volunteer spot that compensation was a small stipend, some meal plan, and housing. And I'm like, all right, let's go. Let's do it. So quit my full-time job, stayed in Virginia. My parents probably thought I was nuts, right? But they supported me. My girlfriend, who's now my wife, again, thought I was nuts probably, but supported me. And yeah, I kind of never looked back after that. We went to Hampton-Sydney, like I said, worked with Coach Vic for a year. Used that as a stepping stone to the GA spot at Salisbury, which Salisbury didn't have a full-time assistant at the time. So it was really nice because the GA spot, I was the top guy. I wasn't getting paid like a top assistant, but I was getting that experience. And Coach Andy Sachs, like he held me to a standard because, he was like, all right, what's your goal? And I was like, well, I want to be a head coach. He's like, okay, I'm gonna work you like that, right? And I'm talking 70, 80-hour weeks, right? And as in addition to working on masters and all that. But I mean, I'm not here today without that experience. I'm not. And yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, at the time I was ready to fight him a couple times, but I mean, I'm very appreciative of it and of him, and I've let him know that. And I think our relationship's great now because of it, right? So anyways, was there for a year. It was supposed to be two. Without going into too much detail, basically they kind of pushed him out the door. And yeah, like the only thing I'll say about that is he got screwed. I'll just leave it at that. He got screwed. And I was looking for an opportunity to get out of that situation. And Coach Vic had another assistant spot open on his staff. So I used that as an opportunity to get back to Hampton-Sydney. And then, Hampton-Sydney, obviously story program, a lot of success, right? And unfortunately, not all on Coach Vic, but the program wasn't where it should have been at the time, right? And they made a decision to move on, right? Mutually. So now I'm like, okay, I went through two head coaching changes in a span of less than 3 months. I didn't know what they were doing with the job, in terms of who they were bringing in. I newlywed, my wife and I had just gotten married that past August. I'm like, okay, like oh, is this really what I'm going to keep doing? Like, or am I going to put my wife through this? Like, we had to, as newlyweds, we had to live 3 months apart because she was still in Salisbury at the time while I was living in Farmville once I got the Hampton Sydney job, right? Because she wasn't going to move until she got another job. And it took her some time, obviously, because Farmville, it's not a hugely populated area. So there's not many options, right?
Not at all.
But fortunately, she was able to get a job at Longwood, and she actually still working there now, which is great. They were able to kind of move her remotely, and I'll get to that in a minute. But so yeah, I'm sitting there like, all right, am I going to do this? What are we doing? And anyways, I just put my head down. I was like, all right, well, one thing I know for sure, no matter who they hire, like if you recruit, you recruit, you recruit, right? It's going to look good. It doesn't mean you're going to keep the job, but at least it gives you a chance, right? So that's all I did for that span while they went through it. I just put my head down, I grinded, I recruited. I was working on bringing in guys. Ultimately, Caleb got hired for the job at Hampton Sydney. And I remember he and I met at Walker's Diner, a little small diner in downtown Farmville, right? And we knew of each other because obviously our ODAC connections, everything. He was an assistant at Guilford while I played at Roanoke, right? We didn't have like a personal relationship at the time, right? So it was going to be interesting, like how that would work. But I'll tell you what, you know, I guess he saw something in our conversation, and he made some changes to staff, but he retained me, and obviously I'm super thankful. But again, going back to coach, I'm not here today if Caleb doesn't do that, right? So that was phenomenal, and I was part of the first 2 years of obviously what's been a very successful rebuild, as you guys know. And it wasn't easy those first 2 years. I tell you what, it was not, especially with one of the years being the COVID year. Obviously, besides just rebuilding, you throw COVID in the mix too. It was interesting. And honestly, my plan was not to leave after 2 years. I just through the grapevine, an opportunity at Millersville opened up late. Their top assistant left, took a job at Towson. And Casey Stitzel was looking for a guy. I guess he's got a small college background playing at Widener. Previously before Millersville was the head coach at Del Val. So he really values and knows like the grind, the work ethic that comes from being a D3 guy, right? And we had some mutual connections. Same thing as Caleb, like didn't know each other personally, but had mutual connections, right? And one thing that Millersville has done successfully is recruit the DMV, and that was an area that I was really strong with my recruiting ties. So, anyways, like I at least had a conversation, and then led to an interview, and obviously things moved quick because it was so late in the process. And next thing I know, he's offering me the job, and my wife and I just bought a house in Farmville. We're like, okay, so I talked to Caleb. I talked to some people that I trust, and it was just too good of an opportunity to pass up. Yeah. So I went to Millersville and was there for 3 years, and we had a lot of success there too. I mean, I stepped into whereas Hampton Sydney, I saw the early stages of the rebuild during my experience there. Millersville, I got there by the time a lot of that legwork had been done by Coach Stitzel and his previous staff, right? Like my first year, we had a bunch of fifth year guys who had been through it, had some adversity, some failure, right? And, they were ready to go. It wasn't all rainbows and butterflies. It started off a little slow, but then we figured it out and ended up winning 25 games, won the PSAC East, went to the championship game, played an IUP team that had multiple D1 guys that they were just loaded. They went to the Final Four that year, but still got an at-large bid to the NCAA tournament. So that was a really cool experience. And then, it was a part of not rebuilding, but reestablishing the program with some new guys after those guys left. And, even though it was technically a rebuild that second year, we still won 18 games and finished a game out of first place in the PSAC East. So we had a really successful year, all things considered, that second year. And then the third year, we got back to, playing really well and, won a share of the PSAC East title and got an at-large bid against the NCAA tournament. So, and again, I thought I was going to be there maybe for one more year. Didn't know what opportunity. I did get involved in a couple other head job interviews, but nothing really kind of came about. And then, I actually had a buddy of mine reach out about Mary Baldwin, and my wife's family is actually living in Harrisonburg now. She's originally from Manassas, but they live in Harrisonburg. Her sister and her sister's husband went to Bridgewater. Sister's husband grew up in Massanutten, right? So it made sense for them to settle down here too. So after everything that I kind of put my wife through, I was like, A, it's an opportunity to get a head job in an area that I know, right? But B, now we get a chance to be close to family, and our two little girls get to grow up near their cousins, grandparents. I mean, my parents are only still in an hour. Yeah, it was a no-brainer. So I reached out, got myself involved, and fortunately was able to be hired here. And yeah, I know that was a little long-winded, but that gives you a little background on my story.
I'm sure when you told her that, she was probably on the way down not 81, wanting to know when you was gonna catch up to her, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's funny when I first found out about it, I was like, now look, I wouldn't even tell your mom just yet. I was like, wait until at least getting on campus. I was like, don't give her hope until, because like I said, I've been through a couple other ones that, didn't really pan out. So I didn't want her to think like, okay, like this is the one. Like I was like, let's not get ahead of ourselves now. But yeah, she was, needless to say, very, very, very excited once I told her about that.
Well, Coach, I know it's a no-brainer because your family's close by there in the Harrisonburg area. But is there any worry or anything on your mind about this is just their fourth year or I guess the third year when you had just gotten the
Mhm.
job as a varsity team? But is there any like worry or anything that was you thought about? Hey, maybe we should look at somewhere else, or is it always going to be Mary Baldwin?
Yeah, I mean, I think realistically speaking, unless you're John Shire and you have a resume, or your first head coaching job is never going to be the perfect job, right? And that's not again anything to say negatively to Mary Baldwin, right? But like it is a very competitive business, and you know, especially once you get to trying to go to head jobs, right? Like ads are going to hire who they know, who they trust, right? And even if you might have a resume, it might not matter if they know someone, right? So like there's just so many variables involved when it comes to head coaching jobs. So like my former boss at Millersville said you can't be picky. You just can't. Like, I mean, obviously you don't want to take your family somewhere that isn't going to make sense, right? Or you don't want to take a job where you don't feel like you can ever have any success. No, you don't want to do that, right? But at the end of the day, like if you look at every little variable and you're worried about every small detail, you're never going to find that perfect job. It's not going to happen, especially as your first head job, right? So, yeah, I mean, there were a couple things I'm like, okay, like should I be a little worried about this or should I think more about this? But, at the end of the day, like I said, you know, Coach Greg showed, and kudos to the success he had, in 3 years, being able to turn this program from brand new program to USA South champs. He showed it could be done with the right work ethic, the right approach. And, I firmly believe that um, we can build on that foundation. There can be even more that can be accomplished here. President Stein just got hired about a year and a half ago now. So, through the interview process, getting to know more about him, his background, and his vision for athletics here at Mary Baldwin, it got me excited about what could be here. It's like this now, but it could be even better 5 years from now. So yeah, there was a lot of positives too, going through the process where I was like, okay, yeah, I could see like, yeah, it's not gonna be easy. It's never gonna be easy, right? But like there's enough here to where if you do it the right way and you really commit to it, you can have some success. And that's what I saw through it.
Well, I think that's a great answer for all the young coaches out there who are kind of looking to see what the next step is. And like you said, it might not be perfect situation, but it's a situation to kind of improve your career or further your career. But I don't
Right.
blame you. I mean, I like Harrisonburg. I want the EMU. You guys already
There
put a
you
smack down on them this year, so
go.
it is what it is. But you get hired in June of 2024, just last year. I mean, the season starts in 5 months. So how fast are you moving to get things in place, as far as recruiting, kind of getting your system going?
Yeah, I mean, so because of the hiring process being the way it was, and HR being HR, I wasn't official until late June, And then the other little caveat that was personal to me was my wife and I were expecting our second daughter in mid-July. So, you know, throughout the whole process, I made it clear. I was like, if I get hired, I can't move down right away. Like I can't do that to my wife and my family, right? Like I gotta stay up in PA at least until the baby's born, we're settled a little bit, right? So I mean that definitely obviously I'm doing what's best for my family, but that definitely impacted a little bit in terms of what I could or couldn't do to an extent, right? Um, but you know, the nice thing in terms of sustainability through all that was you know, the previous GA actually was hired on as an admissions counselor here at Mary Baldwin, and you know, stayed on through his job description and staying on staff as an assistant coach. So he's on staff with me right now. His name's Tevin Brown. So he was a GA for Coach Griggs for the last 2 years, right? And now in his third year as an assistant, but full-time admissions counselor. Um, Having him kind of be that backbone here was definitely huge through the process, right? He was able to continue, like same thing I did when I was at Hampton Sydney, right? He was able to continue the recruiting through the hiring process, right? He was able to stay connected with some of the players that may have been a little wishy-washy, right? A little worried. I mean, now in today's world, especially, it's like almost a thing. Everyone's got to go into the portal, right? So so he was able to kind of keep that afloat a little bit, which helped. So that was huge. But really, I mean, at the end of the day, I think because we dabbled in a couple kids, right? But I'll be honest, the team I have this year, I inherited everyone. I didn't bring in anyone individually. So that was you know, it's a unique experience in that regards. In terms of establishing a rapport, system, values, all that, a lot of conversations. I mean, I can't tell you the number of conversations I had on the phone, some Zoom calls, right? Just developing it's relationships, right? And that was a big thing that I was really harping on early, especially because I didn't have the foundation of recruiting any of these young men, right? Usually when you have that and they get to know you through that process, the rest kind of takes care of itself. They didn't have that, right? So yeah, that was a big focus point of me and my approach during those first few months. And then yeah, I mean, once we got on the campus, yeah, I wanted to try to get my hand within obviously the rules. I wanted to get my hands on these guys as much as possible. They had to get to know me. They had to get to know my approach, who I am, right? So was fortunate, you know, able to get my strength coaching certification. So had to because of the rules help out some other programs, which is fine. I didn't mind the additional responsibilities if it allowed me to work with with our guys directly too. So that's what I did. And then obviously what I love, what I didn't get to experience until this year is those 8 preseason practices that the NCAA now allows. I mean, that was huge. If that didn't exist, it was like the old, I think that definitely would have made it more difficult, right? But we were able to really focus on our principles, our values that I wanted our guys to play with throughout the process of this year. Those 8 practices were really keying in on those. So yeah, that was kind of the approach. And we've had to adjust. I mean, we've had to adjust. We like I said, it's been a little bit of a roller coaster in terms of some success, some adversity, some success, some adversity, right? But I mean, every team goes through that. Every team goes through that, and it's the ones that can overcome it when it matters most. And that's why I keep just trying to harp on with these guys, especially because, as I mentioned earlier, how wide open this league is, in my opinion.
Coach, we talked to Coach Khan at Mary Washington a few weeks ago. I know you're not as far north as Fredericksburg is, but we kind of teased him a little bit looking at his roster makeup, and I thought maybe we might have to export some biscuits and gravy and some sweet tea from down here up to him because most of his guys in Northern Virginia. But I was looking at your roster makeup. You got Columbia, South Carolina, Bunn, North Carolina. You've
Mhm.
got Colorado Springs, Augusta, Georgia. So we know that they know what biscuits and gravy and sweet tea is all about. But I got
Yeah.
one good question, and I know I will absolutely butcher this. So I'm gonna say William Le Plastere from Western Australia. How does he make it to Mary Baldwin?
Yeah. You know,
You can help me
You got it. You got it. But I'll be honest. Coach Griggs has had a couple Australians on his roster over the first couple years. So I think he was another one that he just found through some recruiting services, and you know, I guess they developed a relationship through the process, and yeah, that's kind of how it ended up panning out. Yeah, I mean, for me, essentially, I mean, obviously, I have my ties, certain relationships, right, with coaches that I've developed in my time. At the end of the day, I don't care where you're from. If you play and you play the right way, and you value the same things I value, I'll recruit you. I don't. You could be from Australia, you can be from wherever. It doesn't matter. So yeah, I mean, I think Mary Baldwin is cool because you can recruit from a lot of different areas, in my opinion, and be able to sell what the university brings, and be able to sell obviously the program and all that. So I think that is unique. Whereas obviously, yeah, you talk about Coach Khan's example, state schools, it's hard, man. It's hard. I know when I was at Salisbury trying to recruit outside of Maryland because of that difference in price tag, and state schools don't package like private schools. Yeah, it narrows where you can recruit for sure.
Um, any dirt on DJ? We're actually going to the Northside GW game tonight and do a little reporting. So we're going to, finally meet personally with Coach Pope. So it's just anything I can take back to Coach Pope about DJ that I need to, maybe tell him he needs to call him and get on him about or anything like that.
Uh, say you let him know that he let him know that he forgot his practice jersey when we had shoot around against Bavard, typical freshman stuff, right? But all kidding aside, I mean, DJ's been phenomenal in terms of just his approach as a young player. Has he been perfect? No, but I mean, what freshman is? But I mean, he plays his ass off. He really does. He competes every time he steps on the floor. I've had to yell at him to shoot the ball more. You know, how many freshmen do you usually have to say that? Usually it's the opposite. You got to rein it in, right? I'm like screaming at him something like, shoot the ball, DJ, right? But like just a humble kid, worker, listens, coachable, like, yeah, I mean, he's been great to work with. I mean, and I'm excited as he continues to mature as a player and grow up. I think he has the ability also, he finds his voice to be a great leader too. So yeah, it was funny. We're recruiting down that way too. And I went down, and it's the school we're recruiting this kid from, and it was over winter break. So, the guys didn't have much going on. So DJ comes down with one of his teammates. Um, and yeah, he's like the mayor of Northside. Like the mayor of Northside. He was going around shaking hands, kissing babies. I'm just like sitting there. I'm like, yeah, okay, DJ, go do your thing, man. Go do your thing.
All
That's
right,
all.
so
Oh,
I break in here just because I have to let everybody know that I'm the stats. I'm not even gonna say guru. I'm the stats nerd. Okay, so
Okay.
I sit there and I look at your team stats and I try to pick out little nuances or little niches and
Sure.
come up with my own theory. So I'm sitting here looking at a couple things, and you correct me when you get your chance to rebut me. I guess that's what I want to say. So I
Okay.
picture your team right now as a kind of a smaller team that likes to get up and down the floor and likes to shoot the jump shot or the 3-point ball. And the reason why I say that, so I'm gonna back up my numbers real quick, and then like I said, I'll let you destroy me if you need to.
get him,
So
coach.
yeah. So I see that you've taken almost 200 more shots from the field, almost 200 more shots from the 3-point line. Free throws, you're down about 150 free throws from the opposition. So looking at that, that's the reason why I draw my conclusion that maybe your guards are more shot oriented versus, dribble penetration. So that's the reason why I say that. But and then the rebounds. I'm sure I'm digging in here, probably twisting the thorn or something. But the rebounds are down roughly 100 rebounds. But here's where the but comes in. You do turn the opposition over almost 100 more times than you guys turn it over. So I figure you're playing really good man-to-man defense, maybe possibly a little full court here and there. And then you're also stealing the ball almost 100 more times than the opposition does. So how far off am I? And just correct me if I need to be corrected.
I mean, you're spot on with a
Oh,
lot of
oh
that.
no. Gosh, we don't even
Yeah,
have.
no, that was pretty good. That was a pretty good assessment, especially if you hadn't watched any film yet. Yeah, we start 6'3" at the 5 spot. Okay, you're talking to a 6'8" former big, right? And yeah, our guards are for D3, I would say smaller than average, right? Not like a significant drop, but smaller than average, right? Um, so yeah, it's a style where basically I had to figure out, okay, what puts us in the best position to be successful. Now, you're talking to someone who, like I said, played the inside and the post. Like I scored over 1,300 points without ever taking a three, not making, taking a three. Okay.
Coach, was your 37 all from inside the three?
I'm sorry.
Was your 37 points that night all from within the 3-point line?
Oh yeah.
Oh,
Oh yeah.
oh
Or free, or
man.
yeah. It's 2-pointers or free throws. Yep. Bingo. So and I've been fortunate to recruit or not recruit and coach some very good bigs in my time, right? Like one of my other assistants, Jake Hahn, was a great point forward at Hampton Sydney, right? 6'6" all league player. And I remember working with him on his post game all the time, right? Jack Wyatt, second team all league in the ODAC, right? 6'9" kid at Millersville, Matt Dade, who is now playing professionally in Argentina, right? 6'6" kind of four-man. And then Drew Stover, who, should be first team all PSAC this year. Is a beast, 6'8", right? So like I've been around programs that have had the luxury of being able to throw the ball inside and get scores when you need it. We just don't have that. We don't have that. Ray Benton, who started primarily all of our games at that spot, man, I'll tell you what, that kid has more heart than anyone I've ever coached. If he was 6'8", he would not be at Mary Baldwin. He would be playing at the scholarship level, right? Uh, but you can't change who he is physically, and unfortunately, sometimes it does hurt us when it comes to either him going inside and trying to score against guys bigger than him or having to guard those situations, right? So that's definitely been an adjustment for me, and obviously something I'm going to probably address with recruiting a little bit. But like I said, for this year, I was like, okay, what puts us in the best position to be successful? And some really good returning guards off last year's team. 2 fifth-year guards, Jaden Ignacio and Quentin Hart. Quentin Hart being a former all-league player last year. Jaden is playing like an all-league player right now. Zach Sloan, who's kind of a wing 3-and-D type kid, really had some good games for us early. Has struggled because I think the league's starting to really key in on him, and he's not used to being in that role, right? He's trying to snap out of that a little bit, but has helped us win a lot of games. So like I have those 3 guards, right? And then as we talked about, we have, DJ, a freshman guard, we have another freshman guard, all very, very good, talented players. I'm like, all right, we got to space teams out. We got to play quick. We got to be gritty. We got to be tough defensively, right? To mask some of our deficiencies, right? Yeah, that's been the approach. We're very successful when we put teams on their heels, and that's what I've been trying to preach these guys. And it's not always pressing, right? Like just even in the half court, making teams uncomfortable, taking them out of what they want to do. Team defense, right? Team defense. It's not trying to turn the ball over by plucking a guy one-on-one, but being active in the gaps, right? High stunts, early stunts, right? Rotating over, moving on airtime instead of reacting to the pass, right? All things that we really harp on. And yeah, I mean, at times we have not been the most efficient at it. That's why we're 11-9 versus some other things, right? One thing that you didn't point this out, and I appreciate it, but one stat that I look at a lot and it really hurts to see is our defensive field goal percentage. It's not good. Not good.
49.5%.
Yeah, yeah. You're not, and I've been preaching through 20 games to our guys. I'm like, guys, you are not winning a championship with that as your standard. You're not. You're not. As much as we can score the ball, right? Which we do have, again, talented players that can score the ball. That's not going to, because you're going to have games like when we went down to Greensboro, we couldn't make a shot, right? You're going to have games where, you get into a back and forth with NC West and they just have more firepower that game, right? Or you go into a game against Southern Virginia, where again, consistency. I will say that they are by far the most consistent team that we played against this year, right? Helps you have 25-year-old grown men on their team, right? That have come back from their mission and everything, But at the end of the day, they've been the most consistent, most solid. I'm like, you're not going to just be able to outscore because they're going to sit on your stuff. You're going to have to guard them. Going to have to guard them, right? And I think that's been our biggest adjustment, right? We have guys that I think hear it, but struggle to fully apply it consistently. And, if we can get to that point here in this final stretch because of what we have offensively, I do think we have a chance, right? We have a chance. That doesn't mean we will, right? But we at least have a chance. And that's all you can ask for at this time of year.
Coach, I've got a younger son. He's 6'11", 240. He's averaging 23 and a half and 12 and a half rebounds a game. I just didn't know if it might be something you might be interested in or not, or would you
I
ever
don't, I don't
change
want
your
to put, I don't
philosophy
want
up
to
a little
put
bit?
that out for public now. We can have a conversation after one on one.
Coach, this is a brother I have I didn't know I had, so watch out for that. Now, I did want to provide some context though. Like, and you get hired in June, but look at last year's roster. You lose two starters and two role players. I think they're all 6'2" and higher. I think you lose like a 6'7", 6'8" kid. So you haven't replaced 20 points and I think 12 rebounds a game for those starters. But I look at your roster and the stats, and I see you played 10 guys who started or not started, but played 17 games or more. Talk about what you see about your bench and just your roster in general to get them on the floor that much.
Yeah, I've just really been preaching to the guys from day one that, everyone brings value at some point, right? So, whether your role is to be that guy on the bench just to bring energy to build up your teammates, right? Or maybe your role is to, give guys a few minutes break here and there, right? You bring value, and if you don't embrace that role, you know, you hurt the team, because it's every part needs to be brought for us to be our max self, right? So yeah, I have, in my opinion, 10 guys that are solid guys that can play all at some point and contribute to a successful college program. So trying to intermix them in without taking away minutes from some of the top guys. It's been a tough balancing act. I mean, one kid in particular, I've told him this in front of the team. I've told him this individually. His name's Tucker Shiflett. I've said to him, I was like, look, man, you're probably the one kid on this team who can look at me and say, Coach, I think I'm getting screwed when it comes to minutes, right? I don't mean like I'm intentionally doing it. It's just hard to find minutes for him when you got so many other guys. But he hasn't done anything in terms of not deserving those minutes. It's just, you only have so many minutes to go around, right? But I tell you what I've been most proud of with him is no matter what his role is any given day, he's ready. And it's been fun. It's been fun. It's been fun to kind of rely on him in that regards. And last night we rewarded him with that. So he actually got to start in our game against Virginia University of Lynchburg. I wanted guys to understand like that needs to be the mindset. Like it is not about you. It's not about, your numbers. It's not about, your success or your failures. It's about the teams, right? And doing what you need to do to ensure success for this program, right? So yeah, I've been fortunate to have 10 guys that have embraced that. And then, like I said, the other four who don't play significant minutes, they do too. But again, they just bring their value in a different manner. And they've been solid with that as well.
Coach, you have
Coach, if we can, oh, I'm
looks like
sorry,
you have
Greg.
four starters. I'm gonna go first. You always cut me off. I'm
I
going.
got you.
Yeah, you got four main starters here. Zach Sloan, like you mentioned, 15 points a game. Jaden Ignacio at 14 and a half. Quentin Hart nearly at 13 points. And you mentioned Raymond Benton, who's at 12 and nearly a double-double, 12 and 8. But I do see like a kind of a rotation or kind of that fifth spot. You kind of rotating some guys, DJ Villa, Logan, Barber, Weaver, and you mentioned Shiflett. Um, Are you rotating this guy just based on who the opponent it might be that night, or how do you see that fifth starter?
Yeah, so DJ got the starting spot early on. Couple different reasons. I mean, I went into the season anticipating that Logan would be the fifth starter, especially with his experience being on the team and everything like that from the previous year. And he brings one thing that I really value. He's probably one of our best on-ball defenders, if not our best, right? Unfortunately, he had an injury in the preseason that set him back. And when he came back, he wasn't his full self, in my opinion. And we had a conversation. I mean, we had some disagreements even over it, right? Never didn't always see eye to eye, right? Which is okay. I mean, you're not always going to agree, right? But to his credit, he kept working and putting in the time and answered my challenges. And it wasn't anything DJ did to lose that starting spot, right? It was more once we got to conference play, and because Logan was playing well, I was like, I value experience. I value the experience right now over, just over the younger freshman, right? With a lot of upside, and he's helped us win a lot of games. But I was just like starting the game with a guy that knows the league, knows all the players he's going to go guard against, right? Just going to set the tone. And I tell you what, like I'm not perfect. I'm far from it. I've made mistakes, but to see Logan, the first game he starts, drop 22 in the first half against NC Wes at NC Wes felt pretty good. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna lie. I'm like, and that wasn't the reason why I started him. I mean, that's not his main role, right? But obviously, NC Wes went in with a game plan. They were like, okay, Zach Sloan's been killing it. Quentin Hart's been killing it, right? Jaden, like, let's leave Logan open. And I mean, to Logan's credit, again, been down at NC Wes, been used to, being in that gym. It's a tough place to play, and they're a good team, right? And he answered the bell and he helped us win that game. But then I'll give DJ a lot of credit. Like DJ, like it could have sulked, could have gone into a dark hole, right? But didn't really do that. I mean, shoot, there was one game against William Peace where he only played 7 minutes, got in some foul trouble and didn't play much, right? Didn't really add too much. So I just went with a couple different guys. But literally the next night in a back-to-back, we have fight for one of the best teams in our league as well come here. And he helps us win that game. He plays 26 minutes, has 10 and 6 off the bench for us, right? So, it's been nice to see him handle that adjustment maturely and not letting it be a deterrent to his growth. But yeah, I mean, that was the biggest shift for Logan. And then, obviously last night I made a big change too. It definitely was a lot of difficult conversations. But long story short, I viewed our last 4 games as just too much inconsistency, too much focused on the wrong things. And I had to, in my opinion, make a change to make a statement to the team and reward some guys that were playing the way that I think we should have been playing. So that's why I did what I did. And, I'll probably keep it that way we'll see. I might change it for peace. I might not. I don't know. Right. A lot of it, as I told the guys who earned the starting spot and the guys who lost it, said, what I decide moving forward is going to fall on your shoulders. It's not going to be me. I don't have any personal narratives. I don't play politics, right? At the end of the day, I'm going to play the guys who A are playing the way that Mary Baldwin should be playing, and B are going to put this team in a successful position to win, right? And that's what I told them. And we'll see how guys continue to respond and grow together.
Well, Coach, I know we've butchered your lunch schedule. We told you 20 to 30 minutes. You see, we're almost at right at an hour now, so we apologize. But when we
No
talk to people
apologies
like
necessary. I've enjoyed this.
yeah, when we talk to you and you can fill in all the blanks, I'm just amazed, and I just sit here and listen. So, but I did want to pass along my decorated career as a coach in the Pennsylvania County Youth League. So I'm always available. So, you need somebody to fill that spot on the bench, just let me know. But in all seriousness, our podcast has been dedicated to, here in the last few months, we've dedicated it to getting, you D3 coaches out there in order to kind of bridge the gap between some of these kids that are looking to move on to the next level. And you know, on our podcast, we look at 3 to 5 kids a week, look at tape as far as basketball highlights and stuff like that. So I'm amazed, I guess, at the fact that there's a lot of kids that just don't know what their future holds for them. And they can tell you, hey, I've been accepted at wherever, but it's just really not a plan there. And, what I was really trying to tell you in all seriousness is that, I know it's your first year there and the kids on the roster, not necessarily have been brought in by yourself, but if we can help you with, looking at someone, if you've got somebody that's down this way, I will go anywhere for free. Let me just tell you that first and foremost. So if you need anybody looked at, I think we have the credentials to notice talent. So,
Yeah,
but I just wanted to let you know that we can do that. And like I said, we'll be at the Northside GW game tonight. So, I'll pass along a name if I need to afterwards.
absolutely. I'm always open to recommendations. I mean, that's what recruiting is. It's all about word of mouth and relationships, right? And for me, you know, I, I'm telling our staff this year, I'm telling anyone that we're talking to in the recruiting process, biggest thing that I'm recruiting is intangibles. I'm recruiting guys that want to be coached, want to be held accountable, which is hard nowadays. It's hard. I mean, it's hard. Like I go to some of these high school events. I went to a post grad event this weekend, just seeing the acts for some of these kids, right? And again, it's not their fault. It's adults. It's adults. Adults aren't holding them to the standard, in my opinion, that they need to be held to for whatever reason. I'm not here to go into that, right? That's all. We can talk for another hour about that, right?
Right, right.
But at the end of the day, for me, and for this program, I'm a firm believer. Like I can miss on the talent, and you will. Like no coach is perfect, right? Anyone says otherwise, they're full of it, right? We've all missed at one point or another, right? I just can't miss when it comes to character and tangibles in this class as we're starting to continue to build and grow and reestablish what we need to be doing here. And that's the biggest thing I'm looking for. And anyone that would express interest in Mary Bowman, that's one of the first things I say is like, well, besides obviously figuring out, okay, you got some size, now we can talk.
There
But
you go. There you go.
but you get what I'm saying. Like that's
Oh
that's
yeah.
really big. And we've gotten a couple commitments already, and they've heard that, and they know they're not entitled to anything. That they can come in and not play, or they can come in and earn it. It's going to fall on their shoulders and what they do. Starting now, not just when they step foot on campus. Because I tell you, well, the other thing, going back, not to keep harping on DJ, but what really prepared him in my mind for his freshman year was the work he put in going into the summer. Right, you could tell he worked his ass off, and physically was ready for the college level. Whereas a lot of these freshmen think they're ready,
Yep.
but then reality sets in, and unfortunately, it's too late by that point. And that's why you see the biggest growth physically for a lot of kids from freshman to sophomore year, because once that reality hits, then they're like, okay, yeah, I probably should be in the weight room and I'll do all these things.
Right, exactly. No, we got a kick out of the first year football head coach over at Roanoke, Coach Steinspring,
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
he basically told us, about recruiting. He says, "I don't know how much money I actually owe to the Walmart greeter. I've gotten so many good, hints and comments from those people." He just said, "Hey, recruiting can be the janitor, the Walmart greeter, or a coach," and it was just amazing how many leads he had gotten. He says, I owe them a lot of money. So I just got a kind of a kick out of that.
That's great. No, he's spot on too. Spot on.
Well, Coach, our last question to you. You're at 11-9 right now, 5-4 in the conference. How do you end on a strong note to end the season?
Yeah, it's just being committed to playing the right way. So from an offensive standpoint, sharing the ball, being willing to sacrifice individual success for team success, making the right reads, the right plays, playing in control, limiting turnovers. That's going to really help us on that end because the talent will take care of itself. It's just I feel like we've shot ourselves in the foot too many times to count here in the last, four when we lost our last 4 games, right? And then as I talked about earlier, we got to find a way. We're not, and I told the guys like we're not going to go from being 49.5% defensive field goal percentage to one of the top defensive teams in the country. That would be totally unfair for me to expect, right? but can we close the gap? Right? Can we close the gap? And that's all it's going to take, in my opinion, because I mean, you look at it in conference play, like even Southern Virginia is a really good defensive team, in my opinion, right? Their defensive field goal percentage is 44.5. So it's not elite. It's good, but it's not elite, right? So it's like if we can really commit to that, which we're fully capable, even with our deficiencies, with our size, right? If we're able to commit to that and sacrifice on that end of the floor, yeah, I think we got a chance. I think we got a chance. And again, it's going to take a lot. It's going to take everyone doing it because I told the guys, even if one doesn't fully commit, that's enough to break the link in the chain. That's so we'll see. We'll see if guys are willing to put aside personal ambition, personal agendas, right, for the betterment of the team. I really believe if that happens, we have a chance. But again, you're relying on 18 to 22-year-old young men, and again, I know how I was as a player. And that I think that's why I harp on it so much because I made mistakes too. And now I think back with years of coaching and maturity, like, man, if I would have done this better, what could have been, right? And I share that with the guys. I'm like, don't be sitting in my position 10 years from now and have those same thoughts, right? So yeah, I'm excited to see what this team can do. Good group, phenomenal young men. That's one thing I'm most proud of. We always get compliments when we're on the road in terms of how we interact on bus trips, right? People amongst the university, I'm getting feedback from them. So, in that regards, I'm very proud of what we have here. And obviously that's really important for me to continue to sustain moving forward.
Well, Coach, we do appreciate your time. I know we held you over about an
All
hour
good.
now, but like our best interviews are always when the coach talks and we kind of just listen in. So we do appreciate your time and we'd love to have you on at the end of the season, kind of do a little review. So we
Sure.
do appreciate your time.
It'd be my pleasure. I thank you guys for everything you do, and obviously the platform that you bring to this level. And again, we talk about like just a lot of kids just aren't aware, don't know. So, you know, stuff like this is huge.
Well,
And
thank you.
I think I think the more that you can bring this information to other people, the easier it makes our job. So
Absolutely.
so I really appreciate it. And I was excited when you guys reached out and invited me on the show, and I'd be happy to come back on, if you guys would like me to.
Yes, sir. Yes,
Absolutely.
sir. Well,
Love
first
forward
year
to it.
head coach of the Mary Baldwin Fighting Squirrels, Coach Daniel Eacho. Thank you, Coach. We appreciate it.
All right. Thanks again, guys.
Thank you.